Have you ever seen someone so powerful on the outside, but so small on the inside, that they think they can trample on anyone just because they have money? This story begins exactly like that, with a billionaire accustomed to being served, obeyed, and revered the way he wants, when he wants. But stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you a lot. It was supposed to be just another executive transport ride, one of those where the passenger gets in, greets, settles in, and continues the journey in silence. But that day, the billionaire decided to turn everything into a spectacle of arrogance. He barely opened the door, and already cast a look of disdain, as if the simple fact of needing a driver was a personal offense. He took a deep breath, impatient, and before even putting on his seatbelt, he blurted out, "Finally, I thought you'd never arrive." But there was no delay whatsoever. The driver was there, on time, prepared, and professional as always. She, a black woman with a firm posture and serene voice, responded simply with a "Good afternoon, sir," trying to keep the atmosphere as light as possible. But he wasn't interested in politeness. He looked her up and down, assessing her as if she were inferior, and uttered another provocation. "Is this what the company calls a standard driver? It's got to be a joke. Have you ever experienced this? That feeling of being judged by your appearance, your skin color, the job you do, as if nothing about who you really are has value." That's why this story is so unsettling. While he continued criticizing her posture, her clothes, even the sound of her voice, the driver remained calm, with a dignity that contradicted every attempt at humiliation. It was as if she had faced this type of situation so many times that nothing could shake her anymore. Still, it was clear that each comment carried a weight, a silent cut, and the billionaire, trapped in his own bubble of power, had no idea who he was dealing with. He couldn't imagine that the woman he treated as just an employee had a much bigger story than he could have imagined. He adjusted the expensive watch on his wrist, grumbling about appointments, deadlines, multi-million-dollar deals. He complained about the air conditioning temperature, the seat, the route, the weather. Nothing was good enough for him. Nothing would ever be good enough. With each new complaint, it seemed he was trying to reaffirm his superiority, as if he constantly needed to remind the world, and himself, that he was a billionaire, someone in charge, someone who could do anything. But what he really showed was insecurity, disguised as authority. And while all this was happening, the driver kept her head held high. She didn't argue, she didn't get upset, she didn't retaliate. She simply drove, smoothly and precisely, like someone who knows the streets, the job, and herself intimately. She knew exactly who she was. She knew her worth. And above all, she knew what he didn't yet know, that this ride was about to become an unforgettable lesson. Stay with me until the end, because with every minute of this journey, the contrast between his arrogance and her quiet strength only intensifies. And when you realize what was really happening behind this simple race, you'll understand why this story became such a powerful example of poetic justice. Now, before the twist begins, let me show you how this initial moment, so laden with humiliation, became the first step towards something neither of them imagined. And as the car sped down the city avenues, something curious was happening inside. The more the billionaire complained, the clearer the difference between the two became. He spoke loudly, like someone accustomed to not being contradicted, but she responded with the calm that only those who carry many stories and many battles can sustain. It's impossible not to wonder, how many times in real life do we see this same scene repeated? How many people have been treated with contempt simply because someone assumed they were worth less? If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what touched you the most, because your experiences also help build this space. The car was silent for a moment, and it was in that silence that something began to change. The driver calmly observed the traffic, maintaining her focus, while the billionaire shifted in his seat, bothered by his own emotional discomfort. That kind of unease that arises when someone realizes they're not in control. And perhaps you felt that too, that clash between who you are and how others want you to be. If you have, share it in the comments. It's not just interaction, it's a way to create a community where every story matters. And since we're here, walking through this narrative together, let me tell you something important. When you like this video and subscribe to the channel, it's not just a quick gesture. It's a sign that this type of content, stories of twists and turns, poetic justice, transformation, is with you, touches you, makes you think. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of message, people who might need to hear something like this today. So if you're enjoying what you're watching, click like, subscribe, and come be a part of this journey with us. The billionaire, unaware of what was to come, remained mired in his own arrogance, and each new criticism seemed to push him further into an abyss he himself was digging. The driver, however, remained steadfast, guiding the car as if driving not just a passenger, but an entire story about to take a turn. And it is precisely at this point that everything begins to take an unexpected turn, because some truths, when they finally come to light, have enough power to completely reverse the weight of the words spoken before. While the billionaire remained mired in his own impatience, something discreet, almost imperceptible to him, began to reveal itself in the driver's manner. She continued driving with precision, navigating congested streets with the ease of someone who not only knows the way, but deeply understands the flow of that city, as if she had spent years observing each avenue wake up and fall asleep. It was a skill that went beyond common practice. There was a kind of strategic reading, a behind-the-scenes perception that few people in that field truly mastered. And yet, he saw nothing. He was too busy listing his commitments, his losses, his business dealings that, according to him, only someone on top could understand. The irony is that in that car, the one who truly carried the weight of experience was precisely the person he insisted on belittling. At every turn, the driver displayed a quiet mastery that hinted at something bigger. When he suggested a better route, she calmly explained that the road was blocked by recent construction and that taking it would take them more than 20 minutes. She not only knew, she was certain. Even so, the billionaire wrinkled his nose, as if her efficiency were a personal annoyance. He would never have imagined that this confidence stemmed from years of making decisions that weren't limited to a single route. It was the kind of firmness that comes from someone who has coordinated teams, managed crises, and dealt with far more intense pressures than the temporary bad mood of an arrogant passenger. And it was during one of his attempts to correct the route that she made a seemingly simple comment. The entire fleet had to be redistributed because of this construction. Many drivers still haven't gotten used to it. The sentence slipped out naturally, but it carried profound revelations. How could she know the internal logistics of so many vehicles? How could she speak with such authority about decisions that in theory belonged to management? While the billionaire continued to lament, the public began to perceive something he was not yet able to see. There was a hidden truth in that discreet behavior, something that completely escaped his perception. The driver kept her eyes fixed on the road, but her expression showed a tranquility that didn't match someone who was supposed to feel intimidated. It was as if she knew exactly who she was, where she was, and what she represented. A posture that can only be sustained when one has clarity about their own journey. With each sentence she spoke, with each detail revealed effortlessly, it became more evident that her story carried deep layers, contrasting with the superficiality of the billionaire, who confused power with noise and authority with arrogance. When her cell phone rang, the tone of the conversation reinforced that impression. It wasn't the kind of call drivers usually get, full of received instructions. It was the opposite. She was talking about adjustments, contracts, departmental reorganizations, using technical terms that would leave many executives uneasy. All with naturalness, like someone who knows exactly the impact of each decision. The billionaire only heard fragments, and even then he didn't realize what it meant. He was too busy getting irritated with his own delayed schedule to notice that the person behind the wheel had more mastery over corporate strategies than he imagined. The narrative gained strength precisely from this contrast. With each passing minute, the viewer realized that the driver wasn't just good at what she did. She possessed a mindset shaped by years of leadership, a mindset that observes, analyzes, and decides without fanfare. The subtle signs were there, scattered through gestures, choices, and subtle comments. And, however much he tried to place her in an inferior position, the truth was that she occupied a place that went far beyond what his arrogant eyes could see. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a point in this journey that transforms everything. It's not just about who she is, but how she became this woman capable of maintaining composure even when underestimated. There's something in her story that explains this serene demeanor, this lucidity in the face of chaos, this almost invisible ability to steer not just the car but her own life with an inexhaustible strength. As we delve deeper into this truth, pay attention to the details that begin to fall into place. Every word spoken, every choice along the way, every seemingly simple decision points to a past built on effort, setbacks, overcoming obstacles, and revelations that the billionaire could never have imagined. And it is precisely this past, so well guarded behind a discreet presence, that is about to emerge definitively. Before we continue, comment below. I'm on this journey too. The tension inside the car began to shift, as if the air grew thicker with each sentence the billionaire uttered. He seemed determined to prove something, perhaps to her, perhaps to himself. And the more he spoke, the more he revealed the extent of his own insecurity hidden behind all that luxury. It was astonishing to observe how someone with so much money could have so little perception of the reality around him. He made tasteless jokes, laughing loudly, trying to make the driver the target of mockery, as if the mere fact that she was there behind the wheel was a source of amusement. It was a biting humor, laden with prejudice, a type of arrogance that doesn't stem from power, but from the fear of losing it. When he remarked that driving shouldn't be that difficult, she simply took a deep breath and kept her eyes fixed on the road. It was possible to see in her posture a kind of strength that didn't need to be spoken to be felt. He, however, crossed any line when he began to question her intelligence, insinuating that people like her shouldn't hold important positions. This phrase, uttered with the nonchalance of someone repeating an old thought, was like a silent blade in the air, and yet she remained serene. Her tranquility wasn't passivity. It was awareness. It was the mindset of someone who knows exactly where they stand on the board and who sees far beyond the immediate move. In the midst of another unfair criticism, he pulled his cell phone from his pocket and announced with cruel satisfaction that he was going to call the company owner and demand her immediate dismissal. He said it as if he enjoyed seeing the other, in person, tremble, but she didn't tremble. She only glanced briefly in the rearview mirror, not out of fear, but as someone who already knew how this story would truly end. His arrogance reached such a high point that it almost became comical. It was like watching someone digging their own grave with both hands without realizing that the ground beneath their feet was already cracked. And it was precisely in this atmosphere that the unexpected happened. Her cell phone rang. The sound was discreet, but it carried immense weight in that context. She answered with a firm voice, immediately adopting a tone that wasn't that of a driver carrying out orders, but that of a leader accustomed to commanding. She spoke about investments, about the financial impact of certain decisions, about the restructuring of entire departments. She cited numbers, deadlines, strategies. It was a dialogue that, to anyone even slightly attentive, would make it clear that she was at a level of authority far above. what the billionaire imagined. But he didn't understand anything. He heard every word without connecting any of it. That's how arrogance works. It closes your eyes, shuts your ears, distorts even the obvious. He just shook his head, huffing, annoyed because, according to his distorted view, the driver should be dedicated exclusively to serving him, not participating in conversations he considered too complex for someone like her. It was as if the world needed to revolve exclusively around his importance. The irony was almost beautiful. While he believed he was in control, she was driving not only the car, but the entire silent narrative of that encounter. A hidden truth was beginning to pulsate on the surface, revealing itself little by little in each of her gestures, in each word spoken calmly, in each strategic decision he ignored. His journey, marked by arrogance, was about to collide with hers, shaped by years of experience, resilience, and leadership. The dynamic between the two was transforming every minute, even if he was unable to notice. The journey continued, but the atmosphere was no longer the same. There was something in the air, something that stirred the viewer, as if everyone knew, except him, that the fall was near. The way she dealt with each attack, maintaining her composure while he lost emotional control, created a contrast impossible to ignore. It was almost a living metaphor for bad decisions, for what happens when someone believes they are above everything, without realizing that every word spoken has impact, weight, and consequence. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a layer to this story that reveals not only who she is, but also who he has become throughout his own journey. There's a powerful force in the revelations that begin to emerge when pride clashes with truth. It's in this clash that transformation happens, that his mask begins to crack, and that her silence begins to speak volumes more than any direct answer. Something is about to appear there, something that completely redefines each person's position in this seemingly ordinary yet profoundly significant encounter. And before we move on, write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." As the car finally began to slow down, nearing its destination, the billionaire was already completely consumed by that feeling of superiority that only grows when no one challenges it. He exited the vehicle even before the driver turned off the engine, slamming the door shut as if he wanted the whole world to know of his frustration. He looked around, adjusted his expensive suit, checked his Swiss watch, and muttered something about unprepared people and services that should never have been approved. With each word, it became more evident that he believed he was at the peak of control, but in reality, he was one step away from losing everything he thought he dominated. The driver got out of the car with the same serenity she had displayed the entire way. There was a silence about her that wasn't submission, it was strategy. The kind of silence that precedes profound revelations, the kind that has the power to reshape entire mindsets. The billionaire walked up to her, finger pointed, as if he were used to giving orders that no one dares question. He demanded, in a harsh tone, the phone number of the company owner. He said he would make sure to demand the immediate dismissal of the incompetent driver. The word echoed in the air like an insult, laden with prejudice, but also as a reminder that he could never have imagined what he was about to hear. She took a deep breath, keeping her eyes fixed on him, and with almost surgical calm replied, "You already have the contact information. It's me." Those 3 short words shattered everything that supported his arrogance. In that instant, it was possible to see his expression collapse like a poorly supported building. The impact of that hidden truth was so great that he took a step back, as if he had received an invisible blow. His mouth opened, unable to form a coherent sentence. His breathing quickened. His gaze, once firm and arrogant, now searched for some point on the ground to support himself. She continued speaking with the same calm firmness. She explained that from time to time she voluntarily took the wheel of one of the company cars to understand the customer journey, observe the real experience of employees, identify flaws, and feel firsthand what reports never show. This habit was not a whim, but a conscious leadership strategy, a profound transformation in management style, guided by the mindset of someone who believes that great decisions only make sense when they arise from practice, from direct contact, from real stories. As she spoke, his image withered, as if each of her words rewrote the place he imagined himself to occupy in the world. The billionaire tried to stammer out a justification, something between an excuse and an attempt to soften his own behavior, but nothing made sense. He was facing a truth he couldn't manipulate. There in front of him was a woman who carried unquestionable authority, a strength built not by money, but by her life story. And this revelation had an even greater impact because it came with immense dignity. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't humiliate him, she didn't return any of the insults. She simply exposed the reality and let reality itself do the work of dismantling his arrogance. The silence that followed had an almost physical weight. It was the silence of transformative revelations, of situations that expose inner truths that many try to avoid. Poetic justice was happening right there, before us, in real time. Whoever judged by appearances was defeated by their own arrogance. He realized that he had spent the entire journey trying to diminish the very person who could decide his fate as a client, as a business partner, or even as someone who would never, again, be served by the company. It was a lesson embedded in the very reverse humiliation, a cruel reminder that social masks fall when the truth finds a way to reveal itself. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this moment represents not only the billionaire's downfall, but also her silent rise. There is an extraordinary strength in the posture of someone who doesn't need to shout to be heard, who doesn't need to humiliate to show power, who doesn't need to use titles to be recognized. It's the strength of someone who leads from behind the scenes, through their actions, through the invisible decisions that shape the journey of everyone around them. And this becomes even more evident when we consider that race, that seemingly ordinary encounter, became a mirror where he had to confront his own mindset, warped by privilege. The revelation continued to reverberate with each passing second. He looked at her with a mixture of shame, surprise, and a kind of discomfort that arises when someone realizes they were completely wrong from the very beginning. There was nothing he could say to erase the harsh words he had used, nor to undo the tasteless jokes, nor to justify the prejudice that had flowed so naturally from his mouth. And she, aware of this impact, remained stable, strong, without needing to prolong his pain. The issue there wasn't revenge, it was truth. And the truth, when it comes, rearranges everything. Ultimately, this scene reveals more about him than about her. While he demonstrated the fragility that lies behind all arrogance, she showed that true power is that which remains firm even when no one recognizes it at first glance. And this role reversal, this clash between who he thought he was and who she really was, creates a tension that hasn't ended yet, because their journey still has more layers to reveal. Comment below. This makes sense to me. When silence finally settled between them, it was no longer just the echo of the revelation that lingered in the air, but something deeper, an internal, almost palpable change that swept through the billionaire like an unexpected wave. He couldn't hold his own gaze. The man who, minutes before, had walked as if he owned the world, now seemed shrunk inside his expensive suit, as if every gesture had become too large for the reality he had just discovered. It was a scene that didn't need explosions, shouts, or confrontations. The strength lay precisely in the stillness. And, in that stillness, he began to perceive his own fragility. The driver, or rather the owner, the leader, the strategic mind behind the entire company, remained composed, her presence effortlessly filling the space. There was no arrogance in her gaze, no vengeance, no cruel satisfaction, just a quiet certainty, as if she had already lived through similar situations along the way and knew that true transformation happens when the truth finds the right path to reveal itself. She didn't need to humiliate him. Reality itself had already done that for her. His voice trembled as he tried to apologize, but it came out almost as a rushed whisper. Not because he didn't want to apologize, but because he was still trying to understand who he was before that encounter and who he was becoming afterward. His mindset, built over years on pillars of superiority, was beginning to crack, and it was clear that this crack was necessary. Life sometimes teaches through the edges, through the cracks, through the moments when we are forced to see ourselves without filters. He was facing one of those hidden truths that change the course of a story. The owner, noticing his distress, spoke with a firm gentleness that only true leaders possess. She said she held no grudge, but that attitudes like his happen precisely because many people believe their worth is above that of others. She spoke of respect, not as a prepared speech, but as a living principle that guides decisions, relationships, and entire companies. She explained that her presence there behind the wheel was not a test or a trap, but a genuine way to connect with those who make the company exist every day. Her leadership was not about control, but about understanding, something he had never truly experienced. As she spoke, his reaction went beyond embarrassment. There was something akin to an awakening, a kind of crack in the emotional armor he had worn for so long. Perhaps for the first time, he understood that power doesn't come from how much you can humiliate someone, but from the human impact your actions leave in their wake. It was as if everything he believed he had learned about success was being rewritten right there, in real time, before a woman he had tried to diminish, and who proved to be far greater than he could have imagined. He finally looked up and simply said, "I was wrong." There was no defense, no justification, and, curiously, that simplicity said much more than long speeches. The owner responded with a slight nod and a serene smile, stating that acknowledging the mistake was already a start. The lesson she left in that moment wasn't just for him. It was for anyone who has ever believed that human worth can be measured by appearance, function, origin, or any other superficial label. She concluded in a calm voice that life has a curious way of placing each person in the right spot to learn what they most need. Sometimes it's necessary to go through an uncomfortable experience, to see what was hidden in one's own shadows, and with that same gaze that guided the entire journey, she reinforced the central message. Never underestimate anyone. The person you try to diminish today may be exactly the one who will show you how much you still need to grow. Her words carried no weight of judgment, but emotional depth. It was as if they were seeds sown in the fertile ground of reflection, seeds that, sooner or later, would germinate in his consciousness. And perhaps that was what made the moment so impactful. It wasn't a punishment, but an opportunity for transformation, a real chance to rebuild, to question old mindsets, to remake past decisions, to see humanity beyond labels. He stood there for a few seconds, unsure exactly where to look, but deep down, it no longer mattered. That scene had marked his journey in a way he would never forget. It was the kind of experience that dismantles certainties, exposes vulnerabilities, and realigns one's worldview. And, as she returned to the car with her usual calm demeanor, he understood, even if he couldn't yet put it into words, that he had been touched by a profound truth, a revelation that would change how he treated people from then on. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this story doesn't end with his downfall or her strength. There's something bigger happening here, something involving the human impact each encounter leaves, even when it only lasts a few minutes. Future choices are being shaped in this instant, perceptions are being rearranged. A new path is opening up for him, and also for those who listen to this story with an open heart. It's at this point that the narrative ceases to be just about two characters and begins to connect with real life, with each of us, with our own silent turning points and with the behind-the-scenes events that shape who we are becoming. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," and if you've made it this far, you can tell this story has touched you in some way. When we follow a journey like this, full of twists and turns, hidden truths, and that touch of humanity that makes us think about our own lives, a real connection is created, almost as if we were talking side by side. And that's why I want to make you a very simple, very light invitation. If this type of content helps you see the world with different eyes, if it inspires you, touches you, or makes you reflect, subscribe to the channel. This is where stories that transform, that challenge mindsets, and that remind us of the value that each person carries, even when no one notices, come from. And since you've followed through to the end, leave a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end." This isn't just a phrase. It's the kind of message that shows we're walking together in this construction of content that has impact, that moves, that leaves a mark. I read every comment, and knowing you stayed until the end makes all the difference. Oh, and of course, if this video touched you, leave a like. It's just one click, but it helps keep alive this beautiful exchange that we've built throughout history. And before you go, there's a video here that greatly complements this reflection. Click and continue watching it with me.